Well, there are many different types of winter storms, but one that is the most crippling is an ice storm, often caused by freezing rain. And remember, freezing rain falls to the ground as liquid and then freezes on contact. And then this is the result. Trees and power lines brought down by a little bit of accumulating ice that happens to form around those tree branches and those power lines. And the result is just crippling. Here now we're going to take a look at how an ice storm forms for the tri-state here. And it does have to do with upper level systems that brings in a big cold pool of air. So normally what happens would be with a winter storm or a snowstorm, you get that cold pool aloft, that cold air way upstairs, mixing in with moisture closer to the surface, and you get a nice snow event. But what happens with an ice storm? There's a little kink into that forecasting here. You get a sandwich of warm air. So if you think about the atmosphere as layers, you get that cold pool of air aloft or high in the atmosphere, surface or sandwiched into a very shallow warm layer that's bringing in warm and moist air that will melt those snowflakes falling from the higher levels of the atmosphere, and then a cold pool of air at the surface. So those drops are falling as raindrops, but it's so cold at the surface that they melt, or they freeze rather, right on contact. And that's how we get freezing rain. So freezing rain then can cause ice storms, and it depends on how much will accumulate, but anything more than a quarter inch or so will usually be called an ice storm. It depends state to state, but that's often where we are looking at crippling effects here with power lines down, trees down, and many slick roadways. In fact, check out some of these pictures here. This is a tree that has been coated with ice, and the weight of that ice has just bent that tree over. That happens too when we talk about power lines. A closer look at the ice that accumulates over those tree branches, and about 1.5 inches accumulation across on that tree branch there. Power lines can fall quickly. It only takes about a quarter inch of ice to add an extra 500 pounds per line on these power lines, and can lose power to cities, really again causing just damaging effects to communities and cities across the Midwest and really across the United States, where we see these ice storms form. Sometimes a winter storm is an easy forecast and all we get is snow, but many winter storms bring rain, ice, and snow, just as we were talking, at the same time. Here now is Chief Meteorologist Steve Horstmeyer to explain how we get all kinds of winter weather.
I'm Steve Horstmeyer, and usually I stand behind the lab table for Weather Lab, but this time, because I love snow, I'm really getting into my work.
Hey Steve, if we have 1 inch of rain, how much snow would that make?
You know, I wish I had $1 for every time I've been asked that question in the last 35 years. It is a great question, though. But you can see right here I'm standing in 1 foot of Weather Lab snow. You can see that on the yardstick right over there. Now look at this. I'm trying to make a snowball here. Yeah, look at that. This is great snowball snow. Now, if we melted 12 inches of this down, this foot of snow would be just a bit more than 1 inch of water. An average good packing snow here in Cincinnati has about a 10-to-1 ratio. That means 1 inch of water makes 10 inches of snow. Now, if the snow is too wet to make a snowball like this, we may be looking at 6 or 7 inches of snow to 1 inch of water. Now, on those bone-chilling days, those days dominated by the bitter cold Arctic air that we get every once in a while, when snow falls and it's very fluffy, we call it a dry snow. Now take a look at this. These fluffy flakes, if I try to pack them into a ball, they just kind of fall out of my hands. They're just too dry to stick together. Now in the high mountains, it gets really wild. The air is dry, it's cold, and 1 inch of water can make maybe 30 inches of snow, or even 40 inches of snow, or in extreme cases, up to 50 inches of snow for 1 inch of water. A dry snow around here, 15 inches of snow from 1 inch of water. A good snowball snow, 10 inches of snow to 1 inch of water, and one of those wet snows that kind of melts when you put it in your hands to make a snowball, maybe 6 inches of snow to 1 inch of water. Well, when I dig out of this, or when all this snow melts away, I'll be back for another Weather Lab.